The fourth step on the journey toward riches is identified as specialized knowledge. It is explained that knowledge can be divided into two distinct types: general knowledge and specialized knowledge. General knowledge, regardless of its quantity or variety, is of very little practical use in the accumulation of wealth that the faculties of great universities, for example, possess in the aggregate nearly every form of general knowledge known to civilization. Yet most of the professors have little or no money. Their focus is on teaching knowledge, not on the organization or the use of it. Knowledge itself will not attract money unless it is meticulously organized and intelligently directed through practical plans of action toward the definite end of accumulation. A lack of understanding this fact has been the source of confusion for millions of people who falsely believe the adage, "Knowledge is power." This is not accurate. Knowledge is only potential power. It transforms into actual power only when and if it is organized into definite plans of action and directed to a definite end. This missing link in all systems of education known to civilization may be found in the failure of educational institutions to teach their students how to organize and use knowledge after they acquire it. Many people make the mistake of assuming that because Henry Ford had very little schooling, he was not a man of education. Those who make this error do not know Henry Ford, nor do they understand the real meaning of the word educate. That word is derived from the Latin educo, which means to educe, to draw out, or to develop from within. An educated person is not necessarily one who has an abundance of general or specialized knowledge. An educated person is one who has so developed the faculties of their mind that they may acquire anything they want, or its equivalent, without violating the rights of others. Henry Ford comes well within the meaning of this definition. During the World War, a Chicago newspaper published editorials in which Henry Ford was called, among other things, an ignorant pacifist. Mr. Ford objected to these statements and brought a libel suit against the paper. When the suit was tried, the newspaper's attorneys pleaded justification and placed Mr. Ford himself on the witness stand, with the purpose of proving to the jury that he was, in fact, ignorant. The attorneys asked Mr. Ford a great variety of questions, all intended to prove by his own evidence that, while he might possess considerable specialized knowledge about manufacturing automobiles, he was in the main ignorant. He was plied with questions such as, who was Benedict Arnold? And how many soldiers did the British send over to America to put down the rebellion of 1776? In answer to the latter question, Mr. Ford replied, I do not know the exact number of soldiers the British sent over, but I have heard that it was a considerably larger number than ever went back. Finally, Mr. Ford became tired of this line of questioning. In reply to a particularly offensive question, he leaned over, pointed his finger at the lawyer, and said, If I should really want to answer the foolish question you have just asked, or any of the other questions you have been asking me, let me remind you that I have a row of electric push buttons on my desk, and by pushing the right button, I can summon to my aid men who can answer any question I desire to ask concerning the business to which I am devoting most of my efforts. He then concluded, Now, will you kindly tell me, I should clutter up my mind with general knowledge, for the purpose of being able to answer questions, when I have men around me who can supply any knowledge I require. There was certainly good logic in that reply. That answer floored the lawyer. Every person in the courtroom realized it was the answer not of an ignorant man, but of a man of education. Any man is educated who knows where to get knowledge when he needs it, and how to organize that knowledge into definite plans of action. Through the assistance of his mastermind group, Henry Ford had at his command all the specialized knowledge he needed to become one of the wealthiest men in America. It was not essential that he have this knowledge in his own mind. Surely, No person with the inclination and intelligence to read a book of this nature can miss the significance of this illustration. Before an individual can be sure of their ability to transmute desire into its monetary equivalent, they will require specialized knowledge of the service, merchandise, or profession they intend to offer in return for a fortune. Perhaps one may need much more specialized knowledge than they have the ability or inclination to acquire. If this should be true, this weakness may be bridged through the aid of a mastermind group. Andrew Carnegie stated that he, personally, knew nothing about the technical end of the steel business. Moreover, he did not particularly care to know anything about it. The specialized knowledge he required for the manufacture and marketing of steel was found available through the individual units of his mastermind group. The accumulation of great fortunes calls for power, and power is acquired through highly organized and intelligently directed specialized knowledge. However, that knowledge does not necessarily have to be in the possession of the man who accumulates the fortune. This preceding thought should give hope and encouragement to the person with ambition who has not possessed the education needed to supply such specialized knowledge. Men sometimes go through life suffering from inferiority complexes because they are not men of education. The man who can organize and direct a mastermind group of men who do possess knowledge useful in the accumulation of money is just as much a man of education as any man in the group. This should be remembered by anyone suffering from a feeling of inferiority because their schooling has been limited. Thomas Edison had only 3 months of schooling during his entire life. He did not lack education, nor did he die poor. Henry Ford had less than a 6th grade schooling, but has managed to do quite well for himself financially. Specialized knowledge is among the most plentiful and the cheapest forms of service that may be had. If one doubts this, they need only consult the payroll of any university. It truly pays to know how to purchase knowledge. First of all, one must decide the sort of specialized knowledge required and the purpose for which it is needed. To a large extent, one's major purpose in life, the goal toward which they are working, will help determine what knowledge is needed. With this question settled, the next move requires having accurate information concerning dependable sources of knowledge. The more important of these are: A. One's own experience and education. B. Experience and education available through the cooperation of others, a mastermind alliance. C. Colleges and universities. D. Public libraries, through books and periodicals where all organized knowledge of civilization can be found. And E. Special training courses, through night schools and home study schools in particular. As knowledge is acquired, it must be organized and put into use for a definite purpose through practical plans. Knowledge has no value except that which can be gained from its application toward some worthy end. This is one reason why college degrees are not valued more highly. They often represent nothing but miscellaneous, unorganized knowledge. If one contemplates taking additional schooling, they must first determine the purpose for which they want the knowledge, and then learn where this particular sort of knowledge can be obtained from reliable sources. Successful men in all callings never stop acquiring specialized knowledge related to their major purpose, business, or profession. Those who are not successful usually make the mistake of believing that the knowledge acquiring period ends when one finishes school. The truth is that schooling does but little more than to put one in the way of learning how to acquire practical knowledge. With the changed world that began at the end of the economic collapse, came astounding changes in educational requirements. The order of the day is specialization. This truth was emphasized by Robert P. Moore, Secretary of Appointments of Columbia University. Mr. Moore noted that specialists are most sought after by employing companies. These include candidates specialized in some field business school graduates with training in accounting and statistics. Engineers of all varieties, journalists, architects, chemists, and also outstanding leaders and activity men of the senior class. He stated that the man who has been active on the campus, whose personality is such that he gets along with all kinds of people, and who has done an adequate job with his studies, has a most decided edge over the strictly academic student. Some of these, because of their all-around qualifications, receive several offers. A few as many as 6 in departing from the conception that the straight A student was invariably the one to get the choice of the better jobs. Mr. Moore said that most companies look not only at academic records, but also at the activity records and personalities of the students. One of the largest industrial companies, the leader in its field, wrote to Mr. Moore concerning prospective seniors, stating, "We are interested primarily in finding men who can make exceptional progress in management work. For this reason, we emphasize qualities of character, intelligence and personality far more than specific educational background. Proposing a system of apprenticing students in offices, stores, and industrial occupations during the summer vacation." Mr. Moore asserted that after the first 2 or 3 years of college, every student should be asked to choose a definite future course, and to call a halt if he has been merely pleasantly drifting without purpose through an unspecialized academic curriculum. He said that colleges and universities must face the practical consideration that all professions and occupations now demand specialists, urging educational institutions to accept more direct responsibility for vocational guidance. One of the most reliable and practical sources of knowledge available to those who need specialized schooling is the night schools operated in most large cities. The correspondence schools give specialized training anywhere the U.S. males go on all subjects that can be taught by the extension method. One advantage of home study training is the flexibility of the study program, which permits one to study during spare time. Another stupendous advantage, if the school is carefully chosen, is that most courses offered by home study schools carry with them generous privileges of consultation, which can be of priceless value to those needing specialized knowledge. No matter where one lives, they can share the benefits. Anything acquired without effort and without cost is generally unappreciated and often discredited. Perhaps this is why we get so little from the marvelous opportunity in public schools. The self-discipline one receives from a definite program of specialized study makes up, to some extent, for the wasted opportunity when knowledge was available without cost. Correspondence schools are highly organized business institutions. Their tuition fees are so low that they are forced to insist upon prompt payments. Being asked to pay, whether the student makes good grades or poor, has the effect of causing one to follow through with the course when they would otherwise drop it. The correspondence schools have not stressed this point sufficiently. The truth is that their collection departments constitute the very finest sort of training on decision, promptness, action, and the habit of finishing that which one begins. The author relates a personal experience from more than 25 years ago. He enrolled for a home study course in advertising. After completing 8 or 10 lessons, he stopped studying, but the school did not stop sending him bills. Moreover, it insisted upon payment, whether he kept up his studies or not. He decided that if he had to pay for the course, which he had legally obligated himself to do, he should complete the lessons and get his money's worth. He felt at the time that the collection system of the school was somewhat too well organized, but he learned later in life that it was a valuable part of his training for which no charge had been made. Being forced to pay, he went ahead and completed the course. Later in life, he discovered that the efficient collection system of that school had been worth much in the form of money earned because of the training in advertising he had so reluctantly taken. We have in this country what is said to be the greatest public school system in the world. Fabulous sums have been invested for fine buildings, and convenient transportation is provided for children in rural districts so they may attend the best schools. But there is one astounding weakness to this marvelous system. It is free. One of the strange things about human beings is that they value only that which has a price. The free schools of America and the free public libraries do not impress people because they are free. This is the major reason why so many people find it necessary to acquire additional training after they quit school and go to work. It is also one of the major reasons why employers give greater consideration to employees who take home study courses. They have learned from experience that any person who has the ambition to give up a part of his spare time to studying at home has in him those qualities which make for leadership. This recognition is not a charitable gesture. It is sound business judgment on the part of the employers. There is one weakness in people for which there is no remedy. It is the universal weakness of lack of ambition. Persons, especially salaried people, who schedule their spare time to provide for home study seldom remain at the bottom very long. Their action opens the way for the upward climb, removes many obstacles from their path, and gains the friendly interest of those who have the power to put them in the way of opportunity. The home study method of training is especially suited to the needs of employed people who find, after leaving school, that they must acquire additional specialized knowledge, but cannot spare the time to go back to school. The changed economic conditions prevailing since the Depression have made it necessary for thousands of people to find additional or new sources of income. For the majority of these, the solution to their problem may be found only by acquiring specialized knowledge. Many will be forced to change their occupations entirely. When a merchant finds that a certain line of merchandise is not selling, he usually supplants it with another that is in demand. The person whose business is that of marketing personal services must also be an efficient merchant. If his services do not bring adequate returns in one occupation, he must change to another where broader opportunities are available. A powerful example of this principle is found in the story of Stuart Austin Weir. He had prepared himself as a construction engineer and followed this line of work until the Depression severely limited his market, failing to provide the income he required. He took inventory of himself and made the decisive choice to change his profession to law. He went back to school, taking special courses to prepare himself as a corporation lawyer. Despite the fact that the Depression had not ended, he completed his training, passed the bar examination, and quickly built a lucrative law practice in Dallas, Texas. In fact, he soon found himself turning away clients to anticipate the alibis of those who might say, "I couldn't go to school because I have a family to support," or "I'm too old." The author adds the information that Mr. Weir was past 40 and married when he went back to school. Moreover, by carefully selecting highly specialized courses in colleges best prepared to teach the subjects, Mr. Weir completed in 2 years the work for which the majority of law students require 4. This demonstrates profoundly that it pays to know how to purchase knowledge. The person who stops studying merely because they have finished school is described as being forever hopelessly doomed to mediocrity, no matter what their calling may be. The way of success is, and always has been, the way of continuous pursuit of knowledge. Let us consider another specific instance. During the Depression, a salesman in a grocery store found himself without a position. Having had some bookkeeping experience, he took a special course in accounting, familiarized himself with all the latest bookkeeping and office equipment, and went into business for himself. Starting with the very grocer for whom he had formerly worked, he made contracts with more than 100 small merchants to keep their books for a very nominal monthly fee. His idea was so practical that he soon found it necessary to set up a portable office in a light delivery truck, which he equipped with modern bookkeeping machinery. He now has a fleet of these bookkeeping offices on wheels and employs a large staff of assistants. thereby providing small merchants with accounting service equal to the best. At a very nominal cost, specialized knowledge plus imagination were the ingredients that went into this unique and successful business. Last year, the owner of that business paid an income tax of almost 10 times as much as was paid by the merchant for whom he worked when the Depression forced upon him a temporary adversity, an adversity which ultimately proved to be a blessing in disguise. The beginning of this successful business was an idea. The author notes that he had the privilege of supplying the unemployed salesman with that idea, and now assumes the further privilege of suggesting another idea which has within it the possibility of even greater income. This new idea was suggested by the salesman himself, who, when the plan was first proposed, exclaimed, "I like the idea, but I would not know how to turn it into cash." In other words, he complained he would not know how to market his bookkeeping knowledge after he acquired it. This then brought up another problem that had to be solved. With the aid of a young woman typist who was clever at hand lettering and could put a story together, a very attractive book was prepared. This book described the advantages of the new bookkeeping system. The pages were neatly typed and pasted in an ordinary scrapbook, which was then used as a silent salesman. This presentation told the story of the new business so effectively that its owner soon had more accounts than he could handle. There are thousands of people all over the country who badly need the services of a merchandising specialist capable of preparing an attractive brief for use in marketing personal services. The aggregate annual income from such a service might easily exceed that received by the largest employment agency, and the benefits could be far greater to the purchaser. The idea described was born of necessity to bridge an emergency. But the woman who created the idea had a keen imagination. She saw in her newly born brainchild the making of a new profession, one destined to render valuable service to thousands of people who need practical guidance in marketing their personal services. Spurred to action by this success, this energetic woman next turned to the solution of a similar problem for her son, who had just finished college, but had been totally unable to find a market for his services. The plan she originated for his use is described by the author as the finest specimen of merchandising of personal services he has ever seen. When the plan book was completed, it contained nearly 50 pages of beautifully typed, properly organized information. It told the story of her son's native ability, schooling, personal experiences, and a great variety of other relevant information. The plan book also contained a complete description of the position her son desired, together with a marvelous word picture of the exact plan he would use in filling that position. The preparation of this plan book required several weeks of labor. During this time, its creator sent her son to the public library almost daily to procure data needed to sell his services to the best advantage. She also sent him to all the competitors of his prospective employer. From them, he gathered vital information concerning their business methods, which was of great value in the formation of the plan he intended to use. When the plan was finished, it contained more than half a dozen very fine suggestions for the use and benefit of the prospective employer, suggestions which, notably, the company later put into use. One may be inclined to ask, why go to all this trouble to secure a job? The answer is described as straight to the point and dramatic. Doing a thing well never is trouble. The plan prepared by this woman for her son helped him get the job for which he applied at the first interview and at a salary fixed by himself. Moreover, and this is equally important, the position did not require the young man to start at the bottom. He began as a junior executive at an executive's salary. This planned presentation of his application clipped off no less than 10 years of time he would have required to get to where he began. Had he started at the bottom and worked his way up, this idea of starting at the bottom and working one's way up may appear sound, but its major objection is this: Too many of those who begin at the bottom never manage to lift their heads high enough to be seen by opportunity, so they remain at the bottom. It should also be remembered that the outlook from the bottom is not very bright or encouraging. It has a tendency to kill off ambition. We call this getting into a rut, which means accepting our fate because we form the habit of daily routine, a habit that finally becomes so strong we cease to try to throw it off. This is another reason why it pays to start 1 or 2 steps above the bottom. By doing so, one forms the habit of looking around, of observing how others get ahead, of seeing opportunity, and of embracing it without hesitation. Dan Halpin is presented as a splendid example of this. During his college days, he was manager of the famous 1930 national championship Notre Dame football team when it was under the direction of the late Knute Rockne. Perhaps he was inspired by the great football coach to aim high and not mistake temporary defeat for failure. Young Halpin finished college at a very unfavorable time when the Depression had made jobs scarce. After a fling at investment banking and motion pictures, he took the first opening with a potential future he could find, selling electrical hearing aids on a commission basis. Anyone could start in that sort of job, and Halpin knew it, but it was enough to open the door of opportunity. For almost 2 years, he continued in a job not to his liking. He would never have risen above that job if he had not done something about his dissatisfaction. He aimed first at the job of assistant sales manager of his company, and he got the job. That one step upward placed him high enough above the crowd to enable him to see still greater opportunity. It also placed him where opportunity could see him. He made such a fine record selling hearing aids that A.M. Andrews, chairman of the board of the Dictograph Products Company, a business competitor, wanted to know something about this Dan Halpin who was taking big sales away from his long-established company. He sent for Halpin. When the interview was over, Halpin was the new sales manager in charge of the Acousticon division. Then, to test young Halpin's mettle, Mr. Andrews went away to Florida for 3 months, leaving him to sink or swim. He did not sink. Knute Rockne's spirit of all the world loves a winner and has no time for a loser inspired him to put so much into his job that he was recently elected vice president of the company and general manager of the Acousticon and silent radio division. This was a job which most men would be proud to earn through 10 years of loyal effort. Halpin turned the trick in little more than 6 months. It is difficult to say whether Mr. Andrews or Mr. Halpin is more deserving of eulogy, as both showed evidence of that rare quality known as imagination. Mr. Andrews deserves credit for seeing in young Halpin a go-getter of the highest order. Halpin deserves credit for refusing to compromise with life by accepting and keeping a job he did not want. This is emphasized as one of the major points of the entire philosophy, that we rise to high positions or remain at the bottom because of conditions we can control, if we desire to control them. A second point is also emphasized, that both success and failure are largely the results of habit. The author states, he has not the slightest doubt that Dan Halpin's close association with the greatest football coach America ever knew planted in his mind the same brand of desire to excel that made the Notre Dame team world famous. Truly, there is something to the idea that hero worship is helpful, provided one worships a winner. The author's belief in the theory that business associations are vital factors was demonstrated when his son, Blair, was negotiating with Dan Halpin for a position. Mr. Halpin offered him a beginning salary of about 1/2 what he could have gotten from a rival company. The author brought parental pressure to bear and induced his son to accept the place with Mr. Halpin. This was because of a core belief that close association with one who refuses to compromise with circumstances he does not like is an asset that can never be measured in terms of money. The bottom is a monotonous, dreary, unprofitable place for any person. That is why so much time has been taken to describe how lowly beginnings may be circumvented by proper planning. With the changed conditions from the economic collapse came the need for newer and better ways of marketing personal services. It is hard to determine why someone had not previously discovered this stupendous need, given that more money changes hands for personal services, a sum running into billions annually, than for any other purpose. Perhaps some will find, in the idea briefly described, the nucleus of the riches they desire. Ideas with much less merit, such as Woolworth's 5 and 10-cent store, have been the seedlings from which great fortunes have grown. Those seeing opportunity lurking in this suggestion will find valuable aid in the chapter on organized planning. An efficient merchandiser of personal services would find a growing demand. By applying the mastermind principle, a few people with suitable talent could form an alliance and have a paying business very quickly. One would need to be a fair writer with a flair for advertising and selling, one handy at typing and hand lettering, and one should be a first-class business getter to let the world know about the service. Woman who prepared the personal service sales plan for her son now receives requests from all parts of the country for her cooperation. She has a staff of expert typists, artists, and writers who can dramatize a case history so effectively that one's personal services can be marketed for much more money than the prevailing wages. She is so confident of her ability that she accepts, as the major portion of her fee, a percentage of the increased pay she helps her clients to earn. It must not be supposed that her plan consists merely of clever salesmanship to get more money for the same services. She looks after the interests of the purchaser, the employer, as well as the seller. She prepares her plans so that the employer receives full value for the additional money paid. The method by which she accomplishes this is a professional secret, disclosed to no one except her own clients. If you have imagination and seek a more profitable outlet for your personal services, this suggestion may be the stimulus for which you have been searching. The idea is capable of yielding an income far greater than that of the average doctor, lawyer, or engineer whose education required several years in college. It is saleable to those seeking new positions in managerial or executive roles, and to those desiring a rearrangement of income in their present positions. There is no fixed price for sound ideas. Back of all ideas is specialized knowledge. Unfortunately, for those who do not find riches in abundance, specialized knowledge is more abundant and more easily acquired than ideas. Because of this very truth, there is a universal demand and an ever-increasing opportunity for the person capable of helping men and women sell their personal services advantageously. Capability in this context means imagination, the one quality needed to combine specialized knowledge with ideas, in the form of organized plans designed to yield riches. If you possess imagination, this chapter may present you with an idea sufficient to serve as the beginning of the riches you desire. Remember, the idea is the main thing. Specialized knowledge may be found just around the corner any corner. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. Matthew 6:33. May the Lord bless you and guide you in every good work.